Educated Economist here. So in this video we are going to be talking about the permanent divide in the economy that has taken place. Now many people have heard about the K-shaped economy, and they've heard about the inequality, and they've heard about things like gentrification, but it still doesn't seem to be a very obvious reason to what it is that's taken place, especially when you read some of the articles that are out there. They will blame everything under the sun, but nobody will recognize it for the underlying economic force that is definitely playing out right now, which is the Cantillon effect. Now, everybody has heard me talk about the Cantillon effect. I will not let it go, and I share it every single time I find an article or a piece of evidence of it or something out there that is going to describe the situation we now face from an underlying economic force that is playing out, and it is definitely happening in Australia. So I left a link down in the description. Just the headline alone explains it, right? It says it right there. Young Australian households are in a spending and baby making depression. Are they related? So basically, they're spending a lot of money, but they're not having a lot of kids. And so they question this. Are these two things possibly related? And now I find that to be so naive. When it comes to understanding it from the Cantillon effect, of course it's related. People who enjoy spending money are people who do not want to lessen their standard of living. Like, if you're not spending a bunch of money, then most likely you probably have a fairly low standard of living. Just saying. I mean, not necessarily, right? People who have a lot of money have, some of them have a tendency to not spend any of that money at all. That's why they have a lot of it. But for the most part, if you have an elevated standard of living, most likely it's because you have the money to do it and you like to spend that money and enjoy it. All right. So now this is something that everybody has come to the understanding of. We know this to be the fact that if you raise your standard of living because you're industrious, what are you going to do? You're going to spend. But at the same time, what happens to the baby boom, right? Or to the baby population or the growing population, however you want to think about it, that begins to lessen. Right? And why is that the case? So now let me read through some of this article just a little bit, just so we can get a better understanding of how it is that a lot of the mainstream media and a lot of people out there are looking at it, right? It says when the federal government's Central for Population released its latest forward projections in January, it held within a deeply concerning outlook for the nation's fertility rate. Now, again, this is talking about Australia, but really it's kind of the same thing that's happening around the world in most advanced economies. It says here, it was forecast that the total fertility rate, the TFR, would fall to 1.42%, or I'm sorry, 1.42 babies per woman in 2026, down from the expected 1.4 in 2025 and 1.48 in 2024. So this is obviously diminishing, right? Every year it's getting worse and worse and worse. Now, again, it goes on to talk about it. By that alarming bells had been, sorry, I'm sorry, I missed it. To put this in, to put this figure into perspective, it comes to pass it would be below that of Japan's in 2017. By the time the alarm bells have been ringing in Tokyo for well over a decade, warning of the demographic, economic, and cultural impact of society with fewer and fewer children, by extension, are larger and larger portion of the population being made by the elderly. So here it is, the kids are not being born and the older population is growing, and this is starting to put a shift into the economy and how it is that people behave and what it is that society is even looking for and wanting. I mean, you think about it, society looks much different if you're trying to raise a bunch of families in it. If you are a bunch of old people and not a bunch of families taking place, then what is the society going to look like? It's going to look like it's geared for old people and taking care of the elderly. Now, we can go on with this and we can listen to, some of the ideas of what it is that they are pushing out there as far as the data goes, but it's nothing unlike anything we have heard before. It's getting worse over time, right? So here's where it gets really fun to start diving into the history of it, right? Because Cantillon described this hundreds of years ago, that there could be an increase and decrease of the population based on the amount of money and the higher living standards of that particular area. This is what he has to say about it. The increase of the population can be carried furthest in countries where the people are content to live the most poorly and to consume the least production of the soil. Now, think about this from this news article that we were just reading. Does spending money and not having kids go hand in hand? Right? Here's an article. I mean, this article has just come out, but yet here it is. Cantillon described it hundreds of years ago in one sentence. The increase of population can be carried furthest in countries where the people are content to live the most poorly and consume the least production of the soil. Now, I know a lot of people will argue with that. They'll be like, oh, no, man, if you have more money, you can have more kids. And that's the whole point. More money, more kids, more obvious, options to provide for them if you have more money. But that's not what happens. Just go and look at any poor, poverty-stricken nation. There's little kids running everywhere. But you go here to the advanced economies, right? The industrialized economies, and birth rates are falling dramatically. Cantillon described it in one sentence, but you will find all kinds of people out there who will complicate it with education and birth control and chemicals from the water and all kinds of stuff that goes into it, right? It'll just on and on and on and on. They'll have all these excuses, but yet not one of them will key in on one sentence out of the Cantillon essay that describes it perfectly. The increase of the population can be carried furthest in countries where people are content to live the most poorly and consume the least production of the soil. Right? People who do not consume, do not spend, do not have money can have a bunch of kids. You know why? Because it doesn't lessen their standard of living. They're already dirt poor. If you're already poor, what's the chances of having a kid making you more poor if you're already about as poor as it gets? It doesn't. In fact, having kids isn't a bad idea at all, because the more kids you have, the chances of one of them actually being successful starts to go up. So, like, have as many kids as you want. I mean, who cares? It doesn't make you any poorer. In fact, it makes you somewhat richer, possibly. Who knows? But you can't get any poorer than you're dirt poor, right? You're already poverty stricken. So, yeah, have as many kids as you want. And don't believe me? That's fine. Just go and look at evidence of it everywhere, right? Every single industrialized nation has lesser population to it. Population growth is shrinking. And then all the poverty-stricken nations seem to have overwhelming population, right? All kinds of little kids running around. All right. Goes on to say this. In countries where all the peasants, laborers are accustomed to eating meat and drink wine, beer, etc., not many inhabitants can be supported. No kidding. So if you're consuming a bunch and you got a bunch of people who are really enjoying their consumption because they have a higher standard of living, they're consuming more products out there, and that's less products available for the poor. Now, I know people will probably argue against that again. That's fine. I don't, argue all you want. Cantillon described it from hundreds of years ago. And again, you just have to look out there into the economy to see the obvious signs that that's taking place. Here's a good example of it. A friend of mine's about ready to sell her house. She already signed the deal on it. The guy who's buying the house is going to turn it into an Airbnb. We were having a discussion about this last night, and somebody else who was sitting at the table said, I'm going to burn that mother down. I swear, if you sell that dude that house and he turns it into an Airbnb, I'm going to burn it down. This is how angry the dude was. And I was like, whoa, right? I didn't say anything. Like, they know, like, some of them might have known I had a channel or whatever, but I wasn't talking economics or anything like that. And this guy just lights up about how it is that the rich people are coming in and buying all the properties, and it's making it so it's almost impossible for anybody here to have a working class job, to have any kind of, place to live. And it's all because of these rich people coming in and turning these places into Airbnbs and just taking it, right? You hear what he's saying? They're taking it, they're concentrating it, that makes it less for the other people out there. Right? Now, it doesn't matter if it's a house or anything else out there, cars or food or, whatever, it doesn't really matter. The people who have the money are going to consume it. If they have a lot of money, they're going to consume even more of it. And when you start seeing them consume it, then that means there's less available for the other people out there. Whether it's houses, beer, food, whatever, it doesn't matter. It all concentrates into the hands of the people who have the money. And now this is an unfortunate consequence, but when that starts to take place, the people at the end of the line go, you know what? You guys have abundance up there, and we down here have to struggle really, really hard in order to acquire those things. We can't even really be here. You see? Just like the Airbnb. Now, this guy can't really even be here now because the rich are taking it all. This is the unfortunate consequences of ever increasing amounts of new money that pours into the system. Where are you positioned? You do realize this isn't something that's going to be repaired. It's a two-tier economy. When? Are you in the working every single day trying to figure out what it is that you need to do in order to acquire the money to pay rent? Or are you the guy who's buying the Airbnb who is renting it out to all the other rich people out there who want to enjoy vacations? You see the two different people who are operating here? One's working really hard, struggling, trying to figure it out, and people saying, hey, we need to take care of these people, and I totally agree, right? That would be what the economy, what the people, what just saying it out loud, like that's the thing that should be done, right? Take care of the working class individuals. Unfortunately, they're not profitable enough to actually perform a task that is going to be available to them to then trade for what it is that they believed would be the American dream. That was something that we used to do when we were a productive nation. See, when we were a productive nation, we used to build the world's greatest products and then send those products out there to the world, and the world sent us their gold. Awesome deal, right? Super awesome deal. And as long as we stayed in that condition, we would have been awesome. But the problem is that we took all the money. And it was like, man, you guys were really, really, we were really good. Not us, because we were, I mean, that was back in the day, 40s, 50s, 60s. Those guys were really, 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 really good at what they did. And because they were so good at what they did, they were actually able to concentrate all the gold into our nation. And when they did that, it was like, oh crap, man, nobody else outside of our nation has the money to do transactions, because we essentially took it all because we had such great products. Now what? And this is a major problem that the United States faced, because the new money continued to pour in, but not from the production, from debt issuance. See, they severed the gold standard and started using U.S. treasuries in place of gold. They promised they wouldn't print too much. They promised. So they printed too much, and now things have really gotten out of control because the ever-increasing amounts of new money that pours into the system separates the rich from the poor. Back when we were a manufacturing powerhouse, yes, the working class, average, everyday person, they were the backbone. They were the ones who were in charge. They were the ones who everybody was focused in on, because if they were in trouble, the economy was in trouble. But that spender, the consumer, the aggregate demand has moved up to the top tier. It's no longer in the working class individual. It's up in the top tier, 10, 20% of household incomes. And this is now the scary part that people are facing, because you can see the spending. Look at Australia. These kids are spending. These people are spending. Spending, spending, spending. Where's the spending? It's up here at the top. All right? But they're not having population growth. Why? You would think, with all the money, with all the spending, there should be population growth. Poverty-stricken nations, they're the ones who have the population growth, not rich industrialized nations. See, we have a condition in which the increase of population can no longer be carried further in countries where the people are no longer content to live poorly. See, I'm trying to read it from here differently, right? What the sentence says is the increase of population can be carried furthest in countries where people are content to live the most poorly and consume the least production of the land. But if you are in an area where people are not content to live poorly, right? United States, Australia, many nations in Europe. Right? When you have people who are not content to live poorly, then they cannot carry the population further. If they were content to live poorly, they could. It's in countries where all the peasants are accustomed to eating meat, drinking wine, beer, and etc. Not many inhabitants can be supported. Think about it. We talk about how it is that I've seen, around here, homeless people talking on cell phones and drinking beer. When all the peasants and laborers are accustomed to eating meat and drinking wine and beer, not many inhabitants can be supported. Think about that. How many people are accustomed to drinking beer and eating meat, right? In the relative term. All right, 15 minutes into it. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. We're going to read through some of these comments here. I just wanted to make sure that people understood that the idea of the population growth and how it is that it gets carried furthest is really done by the understanding of how it is that people are living conditioned, right? That their living conditions. If they are living in very poor nation, poverty-stricken nations, the population can be carried very far there, which is strange to think that the exact opposite is true of industrialized nations who have high standard of livings. The population goes the least, right? Not many inhabitants can be supported. And now we think about that from today's understanding of the situation we now face, going all the way back hundreds of years into the Cantillon essay that describes it exactly like that. I'll read it one more time. The increase of population can be carried furthest in countries where the people are content to live the most poorly and consume the least production of the soil. In countries where all the peasants and laborers are accustomed to eating meat, drinking wine, beer, and etc., not many inhabitants can be supported. And this is what we now face today in not only Australia, but in many other advanced economies, industrialized nations, and definitely happening in the United States as well. All right. If someone inherits no more than $15 million, they pay no taxes on it. I will gladly pay the taxes. Someone gave me $1 million for nothing. Supple Night or Hider. The reason we haven't overthrown anything is because there's a lot of us that's still comfortable. That's right. As long as you eat, as long as you can eat, you'll be fine, right? People will be pissed, they'll bitch, they'll complain, they'll be all whatever, but as long as they can eat, then they'll continue on with it. But the moment that they spend 50% of their money on food, they'll flip out. They'll lose it, right? And it'll probably start looking pretty obvious on the way there. All right. The big takeaway from this Iran thing. Oh, we're gonna get into this. All right. You're a fool not to become a nuclear nation if you want to secure sovereignty, and two, countries will continue to push harder to shift from the USD. Yeah, they're going to try to push away from the USD, but they're not going to have a very good time of doing that. It's going to be very difficult. And to be honest, right now at this point, I'm not really into discussing the whole Iranian portion of things, just simply because, like, one, I don't really have any kind of input into it at this point. I really like to step back and wait and watch to see what it is that's actually happening. News articles have a tendency to be, you know, over embellished. I don't know how to, just like pushed out of proportion, But the truth will leak out at some point. All right, Australia has kangaroo burgers. Effing great. Really? Sounds. I guess I'd try a kangaroo burger. Why not? That's why I have been stockpiling cans of food and getting rid of things I don't need anymore. And if I need to move around everything, I can pick it all up into a car. All right, now I just can't be now it just can't be a coincidence since they started war on the day with 6 planetary alignments. Hilarious. Yeah. All right. Don't kill the kangaroos. Hey, Merriman. All right. You can have the meat. That's funny. All right. Well, I guess this is probably not nearly as interesting to many of the people out there as it is to me, but to understand the situation we now face with population growth that is very difficult to have inside of advanced economies, and people question and wonder and why, and they do all these scientific research and trying to figure it all out. And I'm thinking, Cantillon literally summed it up in one sentence. So it's not like it's very difficult to understand why it is that it's taken place in these advanced economies. But it is difficult to try and explain it to other people who have got it now committed in their head that it's, environmental, education, birth controls or whatever that's taken place that has created the situation. And all those are contributing factors to it. The Cantillon essay is by far more accurate and first-hand understanding of the situation when it comes to the population growth due to the economic condition that is happening, not so much from the environmental or education or birth control or any of that. I'm in Texan and I hope I never have to eat an armadillo. Really? Like I would try armadillo too. Should we be having kids if we're poor? Not if you're poor, if you live in a poor nation, right? Like, I mean, if you can have kids, man, who cares, right? I mean, it's not up to me to decide whether or not people should have kids. I'm just saying what's happening here with the population growth and the diminishing uh, fertility rates and the excuses that people use are literally symptoms to understand the situation comes from the Cantillon effect, in which that the people who are content to live most poorly off the land, and I'm talking the general population, not just an individual, right? Oh, I live poor. How come I can't have kids, right? No, that's not what I'm talking about. You live in a rich nation. I'm talking about people who live in poverty-stricken countries, right? Poverty-stricken countries have a lot of babies to them because you don't have to worry about lessening your standard of living. Your standard of living is already lessened, right? You got a poor standard of living. You're not worried about it. But if you have a high standard of living like you have here in the United States, regardless if you, the individual, is living a high standard or not, doesn't really matter. It's the general population, it's the general economy, and the United States is quite elevated in that standard. We're probably not going to have a whole lot of population growth, and there's not a lot you're going to do to change that. Why? Because it's an underlying economic force playing out. It's nothing like you can't vote for somebody to change that, right? Like you can't. It's just like, oh, hey, we're going to vote for the person who's going to make the population grow in the future means that you are going to vote for somebody who is going to create a poverty-stricken nation. Do you really want them to fix it? Do you want them to fix the infertility problem? Knowing that it would take the nation to be poverty stricken in order to do it? Do you really want that outcome? Like, can you really say, oh, no, I want to be rich and I want to have the kids too, and then find evidence of that taking place anywhere? Like, does that actually exist anywhere? Like, you can't, I mean, yeah, sure, sounds great, but that's just pure imagination. It's artistic fantasies. It doesn't mean anything, right? You have to look to the reality of the situation, which means you dive into history, you read it from the Cantillon essay, and you realize, man, this dude realized that there is a situation with population growth that rises and falls based on the living conditions of the country itself, of the people of the country. And that's it. There's nothing else. Right? Everything else is a symptom or an observation or, you know, a minute, addition to the major problem of it, which is the actual new money pouring into the system, bringing the standard of living either higher or lower. All right. We're gonna give this like another 7 minutes or so, unless you can get it up to like 100 likes. You get it up to 100 likes, we'll stick around. Otherwise, we're just gonna go for like 7 minutes. I just really wanted to get this article out and share the idea of the Cantillon effect. Like, I'm trying to keep this stuff somewhat limited. I get too deep into all these videos and I just ramble on for an hour. So if we could keep it really subject, you know, closed, to or close to the subject itself, close to it, then we can actually make these videos a little better, I think. So understanding that the issues that are facing in Australia with people spending and the population growth, this is happening all over the world, right? In many advanced nations, not just the United States, right? Not just, Europe, but many nations all over that advance their standard of living from the industrious people, right? And if it could have, it may even been the previous generation that did it. Like we were like, hey man, we're not that industrious. What are you talking about? Okay. Yeah, we were industrious. Now we have the situation to deal with because of that, right? I have no kids that I know of. Yeah, Larry, that's 6 children. Wow. All right. Yeah, 30-year-old woman spent their entire lives on careers and still can only afford to take care of their Gucci lifestyle. Well, and it's again, it's like that's almost accusatory sounding. Am I right? I mean, like I mean, I'm not trying to say that you're accusing women of like, being trying to be professionals and then with their professional career now they can only afford their Gucci's. Okay, well that's cool to say, right? But that's also a really good description of what it is that's happening with new money pouring in, right? What you're describing is symptoms. If you have the ability to advance your life in such manners and then you have your movement into luxuries, that is a perfect description of new money coming into the system, creating the abundance for an individual that dives into luxury. That's not their fault. That's human nature, right? You're gonna like, oh, women did this, and it was just like, yeah, men did it too, right? It's not like men didn't have a part in, with the new money and the move into luxury. Somebody had to create those products to sell. So we have to understand it that these are symptoms that most people are describing as the problem. We have to think back to what it is that the economic force is playing out that is causing this situation to even have the ability to have the situation to begin with. Like people say, "Oh no, tariffs are all part of the economy. They should be," and I'm thinking to myself, the point of a tariff is to deal with an underlying economic force that is playing out. If you have your products that are now finding different manufacturers outside of the United States and you put a tariff on those products to try and keep the manufacturing here, it's the underlying economic force that has now created the tariff situation. People say, oh no, tariffs are good, tariffs first, tariffs, all this. And I'm like, no, man. Government interaction into this is dealing with the fact that the people have become industrious, raised their standard of living, started consuming, that price started moving up, and the foreign competitor says, I can do it better. I can do it cheaper. Not maybe better, but I can do it cheaper. All right. And then the tariffs needed to be put in place in order to prevent the outcome, which is going to be inevitable because you can't stop it because it's an underlying economic force. Don't think that the underlying economic force isn't still playing out, even with the tariffs in place. All right? People are like, oh, we got the tariffs to try and solve the problem. I'm like, the underlying economic force is still playing out. You guys realize that, right? You may not be able to see it. You might be able to change the numbers, but the force is still happening down there. If you raise your standard of living, you are not going to be competitive. If this continues onward, you're going to have ever increasing amounts of government intervention, more subsidies and more tariffs. Continue onward, even more subsidies, even more tariffs. The moment that the government gets out of the way, boom, it's all over. You lose your job. Okay? It's because the underlying economic force is still playing out. It didn't go away. All right, we're at 65 likes and we got about 4 minutes left. 155 people watching. If you want to continue this live stream after the 30-minute mark, you'll go over and hit that thumbs up, get it up to 100 likes, and we'll continue on for a little bit longer. Otherwise, we'll end it at 30 minutes. I used to tease my dad when he would say I was his only son and I would pipe with the only one you know of. The look on his face was priceless, and if looks could kill. I just want to see incentives for people to build skills again. No business. It doesn't matter. No, you don't. Don't even bother at that point, right? Because your skills aren't going to do it. You could level up your skills and say, okay, man, I'm really good at what I do. But then as time goes on, it diminishes. Then you have to level up your skills even more, and then it diminishes over time because you're competing with the foreign producers out there. So your skills can't keep up. The only people who are keeping up are the asset holders. So when you say, yeah, we need to get a bunch of people out here who level up their skills, and I'm like, you're setting them up. You're setting them up for failure for a very difficult life. Should they do it? Absolutely. Why should they do it? So they can be industrious. Why are they going to be industrious? To become asset holders. Because there's no other path to it. You got to be industrious, you got to make some money, and then you got to move into asset allocation. If you do not do that, you are going to fall further and further down the line. This is what I've been trying to explain on this channel for quite some time now. That if you really want a success going into the future, you have to think what's going on right now is not going to change. This two-tier economy, which tier are you going to be in? Are you going to be in the one that tries to level up their skills and use their time and effort and energy to try and accumulate money with their presence? Or are you going to be the people up at the top who are acquiring assets that pay them over time? Which one are you going to be in? These people are spending. These people are kicking it. These people are doing really awesome right now with no real issues in a booming economy. Just listen to Trump. He talks about it all the time. And then at the same time, you got 80% of these people who are going, what in the hell are these people talking about? Because this sucks down here and we don't understand why. And the uneducated economist is explaining it. This is not going to work going into the future. I don't care how good your skills are. I don't care how much money you make. I don't care how awesome it worked for your granddad, your dad, your great, all those people worked awesome. It's not going to work awesome for you because we are no longer in that economy where the producing, productive nation of the United States was the working powerhouse that brought in the money. That's not the way this works anymore. And I know this is scary and it's not something that is going to be easily accepted for a lot of people out there. But if you do not understand how this is work, you will be left behind. That's why I keep trying to share it over and over again. The people who have really dialed this in are like Lumberjack Landlord, Mike Zuber, Dion. These guys are explaining it. Now, they're landlords. They're getting into rental properties, but they are doing what it is that needs to be done in order to position themselves in that top 20% household incomes. And they're up in the, they're up in the upper percentage, right? But the point being is that it's not necessarily the properties, it's the cash flowing assets that they are in. That's the point. Okay? Many people know how to do this. Not everybody is going to do it with property. Some people are going to do it with a business. Some people are going to do it with stock allocations and dividend paying stocks or doing something like that. Everybody's going to figure it out a little bit differently. But those who try to use a day job, those who try to level up their skills, those who try to get a good education, those who try to use all that stuff, it will be a good thing to do. But you can't count on that being the position that is going to provide you with enough that is going to say, hey, man, I'm living out the American dream. That is going to get harder and harder and harder and harder. If you do that road, you can position yourself with your industriousness to become asset holders. If you cut back on your expenses, do not at first increase your expenditures with your new money, with your industriousness, and then secure a rate of interest beyond that of your occupation, you can become that asset holder, the capitalist. If you don't do it, it's going to be hard. That's all I guess I'm getting at, right? I mean, don't listen to me. I don't care, right? But if you don't do it, then you're going to find over time, you're going to be wondering why it is that the American working class individual, the backbone of the economy, the blue collar, has literally been left behind. Like, literally been left behind. You do not matter to them anymore. And that's scary. They don't say it. They don't talk about it that way. They talk in an encouraging way that says, hey, man, we're going to be there for you. We're going to help you out. We're going to figure this out. We're going to do all these wonderful, awesome things to bring it back to you. And then it doesn't ever happen because it can't, because there's an underlying economic force that's preventing it. I don't care all the wonderful things that they say when they open up their mouths. It doesn't happen. Ever. Don't fall for it again because they're going to tell you that that's what they're going to do again, and then it won't happen again because there's an underlying economic force that is preventing it. That's what we have to understand, right? All righty, guys, you got it up to 78. I really appreciate everybody trying. We got it at 33 minutes into this live stream. I hope everybody really enjoys this. The key takeaway from this is to understand that we are in an economic environment in which that cannot be solved when you think about it from the Cantillon effect. New money pours into the system. The people who have first access to that money, they get to spend it at face value. But as that money starts to trickle through the system, the people at the end of the line, they suffer the most with their wages not going up, but the prices of everything has gone up. This is how the separation really takes place with the new money that pours in. When we were an industrious nation, the new money came in to the working class individual, and it created a very great, good, strong, awesome economy for all of us to live in. But as time moved on, the production of the United States has moved offshores, and the new money pours in from debt issuance, which is literally at the top with the people who are using good debt to acquire cash flowing assets, are finding themselves moving like a rocket ship away from the average everyday individual who is trying to figure out what it is that they can do with their skills and their options going into the future. Is it a good thing? Yes, we should produce goods and services here. We should. In fact, if we don't, we're going to find at some point the new money turns off and everybody falls into pain and misery because we don't produce real goods and services here. The problem with it is that we're not profitable with it anymore. And unless you can make a profit, it just isn't going to happen. Uneducated economist. You guys let me know.